Oh.
So, hey everyone, my name is Melanie. I live in 144 square foot stick built tiny house on wheels, and I'm here with my friend Robyn. And Robyn's going to tell you a
No.
little bit about her tiny house and where she's at.
I'm Robyn, and this is Ruby.
Oh, hi
We live.
Ruby. Oh,
We
I haven't
live
I
in.
haven't seen is Ruby a girl, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a little Chewini. Kind
I
of-
have just seen pictures, but she's adorable.
yeah, yeah. She was actually rescued on the streets of Los Angeles. So she's a little
Oh,
rescue in a tiny life with me.
yeah.
Yeah. So right now we live in a 160 square foot shipping container, recycled shipping container on wheels. So not your standard stick built, and then we didn't build it ourselves. I had a local company to Sacramento, California, where I'm from, build this home. So
Right.
pretty cool that you built your own. I'm pretty
Yeah.
envious. Maybe
Oh,
one
it's
day.
It's a lot of
Well,
work. It's a lot of work.
it
Um,
sounded like, but
yeah,
great skills. I mean, those life skills that you learned, and
yeah, and you carry them
yeah.
with you. So it's allowed us to build other things on our property and kind of grow it. And we didn't have that opportunity
Mhm.
before. Like I didn't use tools like that before I started, and now I'm, on an Amish construction crew and doing all this building stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Like, who would have? I think the thing about going tiny, and I don't care what kind of tiny you pick or whatever, but the things that you learn going through this process for me it was building, for
Mhm.
you I know it's been a lot of the legalizing stuff. That's been a huge part of my experience too.
Mhm.
That's like stuff that I never even thought I would ever do in my life. Do you-
Never.
Never. Yeah.
As soon as I saw this, I lived on my sister's property for four
Right.
years, and I've been in this tiny home, I think a total of 5.5 years now. And I mean, I had the luxury, like many of us tiny home dwellers, of hiding out for
Yeah.
years in
Right,
a
we did
remote
too.
area, being able to
Yeah.
hide, and no neighbors really complaining. There was no issues, and then I just happened to start. I just wanted to look at different properties and just kind of, I don't know, dream a little bit. I had
Yeah.
always maybe a farm, and then I just
Right.
started looking at parcels, and I found one in the city of West Sacramento, which is just over the river to Sacramento, where I am originally from. So it's just over the river, very close, but it's its own city municipality.
Right.
Beautiful little parcel, little lot,
Perfect.
about 100 square feet, and a piece of raw land,
Right.
and beautiful oak tree. And I was like, I just want that. And
Yeah.
then here I am, and it was just
Right.
now I'm and it,
No,
and
I get it. I completely get it. And I think that that's the thing about tiny houses is we watch them on the shows or we see them on
yeah,
TV and they're sitting on these beautiful properties.
yeah,
And like cuz we hid two in a backyard and then we lived in a campground and it's but you have that desire to have your own, you want your own home and you want your own land, and when you're living on somebody else's property, it feels like it's almost an incomplete dream. Like you're halfway there. You have
exactly.
the home, but you're landlessness, they call it.
Mhm.
Landlessness. You just
Yeah,
you don't know if you're going to have to leave or do you want to stay? Like not all the situations where people get to park is good. Like we were
hmm,
lucky, we both of us had good parking situations, you know,
yeah. Really, really.
hiding, but if you don't, then like where do you go? It's not.
When you don't know from, I mean, what if I mean, you're subjected to that landowner's rules. That
Yeah,
landowner, what if they sell it? What if they, all these what ifs, and you know, it's up to
like can
them.
you plant? Can you have a garden?
Exactly.
Can you put up a fence for your dog? Or it's just it's not your home. It's your home, but it's
Yeah,
like not really your home. And I
but
had the same experience in the campground. Like
I was just gonna say that.
yeah,
Yep.
you have this spot to stick your house, but and I listen to a lot of people speak about tiny houses on the global level and the national level, and they always come back to ADUs, like always. And it just, and I understand the benefit from it. Like I'm not against ADUs, but I'm just like, gosh, you guys really have to start pushing this on land, because I think the majority of us, we really don't want to be stuck in somebody's backyard for, the next 20 years.
Exactly.
Somebody
It gives
dies, somebody gets sick, something happens, like it's over. You're out, and there's no
it gives
security.
a whole extra layer of freedom,
Yeah,
and um, I can't wait until this whole legal process is finalized. I have a dream for this property. I have a
yeah,
vision. I've had it from the beginning, and it has evolved through time. The more I've learned,
right,
it's been years since I started this process. So the more that I learn about the building process, the codes, our housing policy in California, the more inspired I get by
right.
what property could represent
Yeah,
a diverse options. It could
yeah,
be things. So I get really excited, and I'm a
right.
dreamer. I feel like my head's in the clouds a little bit a lot of times, but I do have, and
Yeah,
and I'm excited for the start. And to me, this feels like just the start.
right.
Legalizing movable tiny home on my own property. That's just the
Yeah,
start to me. And
right.
I appreciate Cruz Mendocino.
Yeah,
There are cities in California that are pushing for this much
yeah,
faster than my city is right now.
right.
So I
Yeah,
appreciate those examples now. I'm really excited that I get to lay it out for my city and like, here we go.
yeah. Because once you get it, it's kind of like a copy and paste. And I know, like, we were a couple years ago, there wasn't anything for us to copy and paste. And I know for a lot of us, even when we try to copy and paste from other areas, when you're talking about different states around the country,
Mhm.
the laws are so different, and
Oh
they
yeah.
just, the blocks are all different, and it's really difficult to get. um one state can copy itself sometimes,
Yeah.
but even then, like, from county to county, it can get
Oh,
pretty crazy.
city
And
to
I
city, state to state, it's all
Yeah,
very diverse and different, even in your same state, right? I mean,
yeah.
reading your book about your state, and I was envious. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have land for that much money? I need to go there. Like, you can
Well, and
oh,
see, and that's
really?
not all the land here, though. Not
Yeah,
all the land. It's pretty expensive here, uh, on a whole. But because
yeah,
this property was distressed, or like just a little parcel, we got it on the cheap. But
yeah.
like, when you just put in a search on Zillow, it's hard to find properties like this. It's difficult.
I looked into land loans. I
Yeah.
looked into what was it called? Owner financing. I looked
Okay.
into, and the owner of this property and many others wasn't interested in owner financing.
Right.
Um, I found one bank that would maybe do a land loan, but you had to be with them for 6 months. You had to
Gotcha.
be months. So, I mean, I signed up, but I was like, I need it now. I need something
Yeah.
now. I ended up actually taking out of my retirement. I ended up taking everything that I had is literally in this land. So
Right.
it was, that's how I made it work, because nothing else would. There's just not a lot of options to
Right.
buy land, and
And
not
so,
everybody
see,
has cash.
we went to Wells Fargo, and we went to a credit union, both of whom were willing to finance the land, but the rates were exorbitant. Like, the
Yeah.
interest rate was just a nightmare. And we ended up going through, a land lender called Farm Credit,
Oh,
that
nice.
does undeveloped land, which I figured out when I was working in real estate, because I was having land deals come through my desk, and I'm like, oh, all right,
Yeah.
let's check this out.
Okay.
But you're right. It's and they have a lower rate.
Mhm.
But when I think people don't realize that when you buy land, it's not like buying a traditional house, because you have to have the higher credit score, the
Yep.
higher down payment. Um, they're much tighter on
Yep.
giving the land loans, because when times get tough, it's like the first investment that people walk away from is barren
Yeah.
land.
Yeah.
So, um, for people that are like in the beginning stages, and everybody that's looking for land, the first thing is like you got to get that financing figured out,
Yep.
because the realtors and the banks don't even want to really like invest in you until they know what you're capable of even
Hmm.
paying for the property.
And to mention, it's a higher risk for the banks, right?
Yes,
There's nothing on the property, so they have nothing
right,
to lien if you don't,
right.
pay them, whatever it is, however it works. But yeah,
Yeah,
the interest rates, everything was just, the stars aligned for me. Not
right.
everybody has this cash, and I think maybe, I'm
Well, but
hoping.
at the same time, you were willing to take that out of your 401k. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it aligned, but it aligned with a sacrifice, and it aligned with sacrifices for us in the
yeah,
process too, because a lot of times things, people say, "Oh, it's too hard," or "I don't have enough money." Well, we
yeah.
save it. We find ways to make it work. Or like for us, we were able to borrow money from my mom for the house, or certain.
Mhm.
So like I tell people, I'm like beg, borrow, and steal to get here.
Make
Do
it
whatever you
work.
got to
Make
do.
it work.
Make it work.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
I
it's
was lucky enough, again, I was very privileged to be able to live on my sister's property for 4 years. That was a
right.
huge advantage, a huge advantage. And,
Yeah,
buying my tiny home first,
right.
saving,
Yeah,
then suddenly, being able to, scrounge up all this, to be able to get this land. And this is my retirement, right? Like
right,
this
right.
is literally my retirement. And now
Us too.
I have safe housing now, almost safe,
Yes,
stable housing for the rest of my life, possibly. So that
without
is a
water.
retirement. That is a retirement plan, right?
You
Like,
need, but you got to get water.
yeah. Once I get access to water, yeah, then I'm good.
Then you're
Exactly.
good. So the water
That's
is
the
the
whole
next
other
step.
process,
That's the
right?
whole other process. Yeah. And I think, for, as many people as I know who live on land in, container homes on wheels, tiny houses on wheels, whatever. Um, Most of us that get here and get to our actual properties do it because we work with our cities and our counties. Um,
Yeah.
we don't, I mean, you either hide or you come in because you've advocated in your city or your county. And I know that I
Yep.
advocated in my area and pushed through a ton of red tape. I know you're
Yep.
advocating in your area. So like if someone's new coming into it, I mean, my advice to give somebody who is just starting is don't do it the way that I did it. I mean, because man, it was tough. Like, cause I'm like you, we had the house first,
Learn the
and
hard
then
way.
right, and then we got through all this living illegally stuff to our land.
Yeah.
But I think honestly, it's advocate and get the place to park first, because what we did
Yeah.
is riskier, because we
Mhm.
could have both been kicked,
Absolutely.
fined.
Yep.
We're playing the scary game. So
Yep.
we're the rebels, but
It's
um
not for everybody. That is not for
no.
everybody.
And it's and I don't know about you, but I found it very hard to be on that side of it, like, cuz that's just not who I am. But without options, it was who I kind of had to be,
Yep.
like.
Yep.
And I think,
For
oh,
me, it was the principle of it, the
yeah,
principle. And I bought this property in the middle of COVID.
right,
So, it was California, executive orders saying you cannot remove people from the streets. Even, you cannot,
right,
during, a pandemic, you can't just remove people when they have nowhere to go. They need to shelter in place. So that was
yeah,
the other advantage that I had, that was like, I can
gotcha,
shelter in place, I can do this, I
yeah,
can. So I had other things that I could use, that rightfully so.
yeah,
Also, in California, we have a severe affordable housing shortage. We have
oh yeah,
thousands on our streets. I think the last number was like 11,000 people on our streets in the city of Sacramento. I mean, there 60,000 in Southern California and Los Angeles alone, I think,
right,
so, they're just not building it. And they're not,
right,
because the building process is so expensive. And that's part of my fight, is you have excluded the individual from the building process completely, with all your fees, with
yeah,
all the amount. It's so expensive.
right.
So,
and
people don't
and we see
realize.
and we see it, in our areas too. We
Yeah,
see a lot of that. From speaking on a global level, it's not just the US, it's a lot of
absolutely.
countries facing it.
Yeah.
Obviously some areas more severe, but that
Mhm.
building that you're talking about, like it, you have the cities that are developing the townhouses or the apartments,
Yeah.
or the big housing. And they're just, it's community development, or it's, large, expensive homes. And this whole
Mhm.
like middle class of homes and starter homes in
Yep.
real estate, the starter homes that exist now are really, really old. And so a lot
Yeah.
of them need a lot of work. And
Mhm.
I know we looked at a townhouse, because we were looking to buy something before we went tiny, and it was $700,000 for a townhouse that
Yep.
had a leaky basement that would have had to been totally redone because they couldn't find the leak.
Yep.
And I'm just
Almost
like,
unlivable. Right.
I'm gonna go into $700,000 in debt to have to immediately figure out what is wrong with this basement that
Yeah.
like. And so these ideas of like, coming out and getting into a starter home, right out of school, it's not there for people to take
Doesn't
advantage
exist.
of in most
Yeah.
areas. And there, I mean, unless you want to come out into the rural areas, but then again, maybe we should have, because we just ended up here anyways because it's the only spot we could legalize. But I mean, I'm happy to have the tiny house with wheels, but
Yeah.
um, it's just, if and it feels like, they've taken those rights away over 15, 20, 30, 40 years, like just
Yep.
slowly,
Absolutely.
as as things have rolled out and rules have rolled out and regulations, and like everybody's like, oh yeah, it's fine, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, this is not fine anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it takes to wake them up. I don't,
It it
it's really hard.
often it often feels like you're talking to a wall with a
Yeah,
lot of, local departments, some policymakers.
yeah,
Getting them to listen is the hardest part,
it
and
is.
figuring out who's going to listen to you,
Yeah,
like trying to find those diamonds in the rough, like, oh,
that,
this person's going to finally listen to me, this person's
right.
going to finally push this issue forward.
Yeah,
Finding those people that are willing to back you in your
yeah,
local community, in your local departments and your city council, finding those people
yeah,
and just getting them to listen, and
yeah.
getting them to push it forward. Those are going to be the people that do
And
it.
they're, I mean, they're out there because I found them. You're
Yep.
finding them.
Yep.
People who are on land are finding them.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that we want to start doing on our alliance, our nonprofit page, is start promoting, people who work in the cities with affordable housing, so that
Hmm.
people know, like, hey, this person's an ally, this person's
Yeah.
helping. Because I think, like, for one, when you're a citizen, like, you don't ever go to your zoning office.
Right.
Really, I mean, how, like, just gonna cruise on down to zoning today and have a chat with them
No.
about minimum square footage requirement. Like, nobody does this shit. Like, it's
No.
just, so when you come into this tiny house movement, and then all of a sudden you've got building inspectors saying this and the health department
Yeah.
saying this, and then you're just sitting there going like, what am I supposed to do? Because I don't
Right.
know any of this stuff, and I wasn't taught any of this stuff, and
Hmm.
my answers are just no, and I don't know how
Hmm.
to advocate for myself. And
Yeah.
that's where, instead of gaining power in our movement, people fall away from our movement
Yeah.
because,
And stay hiding.
yeah, and
It's
we
easier.
hide, and yeah, it's easier, or we face
Hmm.
the fines, or we get kicked, or
Hmm.
whatever, because the fight seems so great.
Hmm.
And I know it felt that way to me. Like when I was hiding, I'm like,
Yeah.
I had people that were like, you should come forward and advocate, and I'm just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, why am I going to do that? And then after working with my group for a couple years and gaining that knowledge and just researching like you've
Yeah.
done, um, I got to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm about to have a talk with zoning. And
Yeah,
I
you
mean, and
you
it paid
prepared.
off. Yeah.
You prepared. I jumped in. I jumped in blind. I was like, I'm
But
just gonna do this. This isn't right. All I know is it's not right. I'll
right.
learn later.
Yeah. And I think either way you go, if you choose to just go and talk to them, they do
Hmm.
listen to you. Whether they actually absorb it and are going to do anything about it, they
Yeah.
still do listen to you. Um,
Hmm.
And I don't think all areas are going to absorb it or accept it, but I think that more
Yeah.
people who get on board with even just basic knowledge or just walking in there and saying, look, this is what I want to do, um, the more of us that speak and talk to our local officials, it just, that's where it has to really come from. Because
That's the
until
demand.
citizens,
We have to
yeah,
be the demand.
we have to be the demand. Yeah.
If there's no demand, they're
They don't
not
bring it
likely
to
to
the
go out on
table.
a limb. Yeah,
No,
they're not
they're
likely to
not
go
just
out
going
on
to
a
be
limb and
chilling at
yeah,
home watching TV going, that's a pretty cool container home. Let's put
yeah.
some of those in our city. Like they don't bring it to the table. It takes
No.
people stepping up and going, hey, we want this in our area, like, and this is what's happening over here, and being a source of information for them. Even if you don't have
Mhm.
the knowledge, you can point them to people that do have the knowledge.
Yep.
So because there's a lot of us out there now talking and doing this stuff, so we're
Yep.
not as alone as I felt really alone at the beginning,
Yeah,
and I don't think that people have to feel that way anymore,
exactly.
with
I,
as
I
much going on.
definitely I definitely did in the beginning.
Yeah,
I definitely felt very alone. But the more, honestly, the more I got out into social media, the
yeah,
more I kind of outed myself,
right,
the more exposed I was, the more people came to me and were like, oh, what's going, and just gain more resources and people and support that way.
right,
If I remain quiet, or if I just left, or if I just,
right.
none of this would have been possible.
And they
None of
told
this
you to
without
leave,
other
right?
advocates.
Th-
Yeah.
yeah, they told you to just like pack it up and roll out.
Yeah. Yeah. They were just like, don't you think it would be easier if you went somewhere else? And I'm like, well, I'm sure it would be, wouldn't it? For
Yeah.
you too.
Well, would you
But
like to like buy the land for me and help me move my house? Like,
yeah,
I,
like it's so easy, and I've told, the departments of my city, I'm like, you don't think I've looked at plan B, plan
right,
C, plan D? You don't think
right,
I've looked at options? You don't think I remember earlier this year looking, and I'm like, could I buy a home at this point?
no,
On my salary, with the
right,
interest rate. Could I do it? Nope.
no,
And so I was like,
yeah,
what am I supposed to do? And the average rent, we found out, in my city is $2,000 a month. And I'm just like, do you want to see my my income? I'll show
right,
you. Like, there are no options in this city. There's nothing. But you still
right,
have low income paying jobs. You still
yeah,
have to have these people here. We all just can't leave.
right, yeah,
That's not a long-term solution.
right,
That's not realistic. You need options.
exactly,
You need diverse options, and not just for, low income, extreme low income. You need it just for people in general to have
right,
housing options. Not everybody wants a big home. Maybe you want to use
right,
less resources. You want to live minimally. There's so many
yeah,
different lifestyles, and we have such a
yeah.
narrow mind of housing. We
Yeah,
really need to
and it's like
broaden our
it,
mind.
and so, my husband and I, we make really pretty good money, and we
Mhm.
could have gone and purchased a house. Like,
Yeah.
purchasing a house wasn't ever really an issue for us. It was the 30-year debt. It was just, the keeping up with the Joneses, something always breaking, like the stress
Yeah.
of living every day that we just, and I just kept thinking back to the beginning of our marriage, like we didn't have anything, like we didn't have all this shit, we didn't have all
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
crap and all this stuff to take care of, and we were happier. And I feel like a lot of that has been renewed going tiny because that stuff
Yeah.
has, gone away. But it's it, so like for us, I mean, had there been maybe a $50,000 tiny house in the city, that would have been appealing to us. Like
Hmm.
maybe we would have purchased that and not
Yeah.
done this. But um those don't exist in our area unless you want something that's really, really old, or
Yeah.
a really old mobile home, like a really
Yeah.
old one. And then they're getting rid of all the mobile home parks now too. They're wiping a lot of those out because the land's more valuable, right? So
Exactly.
they want to build their developments there.
Yep. Yep.
and and I've got friends in Charlottesville. They're closing down a mobile home park. They're trying to find land to move their mobile homes onto them because they own them, but they don't own that
Yeah.
land. And it's
Yep.
the same kind of problem. Like,
Yep.
so it's across the board. It's just it makes me crazy. So yeah, I'm in agreement. I think the more people that stand up, and both you and I did stand up and kind of like come out to our officials
Yeah.
while we were illegal,
Yeah.
while we were illegal.
We're like,
And
this is our option. This is what we're doing.
and I remember telling my zoning lady, I'm like, yeah, I can't pay taxes. I can't do this. I can't do that. She's like, you want to pay taxes? I'm like, I'd love to. I'll write a check right now. Like,
Yeah.
let's go. Like, um, and
I
then when my other friends came in with their tiny house, and I had talked
Mhm.
to her after, they had inquired about purchasing property out here, she was like, well, they said they're from this city, right? And she's like, but tiny houses aren't legal in that city. And I'm like, tiny houses aren't legal anywhere. Like,
Right.
just, it doesn't on wheels, like, this
I know.
specific type of house. I'm like, you don't see we're all hiding. This is the
Yeah.
problem. And
Yep.
then I had explained that to her when we purchased our property, but I don't think it really hit home until more people started coming to her. And all of a sudden she's like, there's a lot of people that can't park these. Like, it's not
There's a
just
lot
like
of us out
one
there.
crazy lady just showed up and went, yeah,
That's how
all of
I
a
feel
sudden
too in my city.
she's got like, 50 people calling, and she's sitting here going, well, all right. Like,
I know.
what a way, you're not the only one. So I think it becomes more real the more those officials get to see real stories and real people.
Exactly.
And so that's one of the reasons that, I encourage people to speak out. And
Mhm.
it's scary and it's hard. It's scary to
Absolutely.
stand up in front of these people and like, because I think we deem them as like higher than
Yeah.
us, right? Like they have authority. But when
They
you
work
think
for
about
us.
it, they work for us,
They
right?
work for us.
Like they work to make sure that our cities and our towns work well.
Yep.
That's
That
their
we're
job.
healthy and yep,
Yeah,
safety and health of our community. That's what it's
right.
about.
So I
And
think
that's what
when
we
we
have to
take on
remind
that
them.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're here for me. It's not
Yep.
the other way around.
Yep.
I might be speaking, but you're here to listen to me. And I think
Yep.
that takes a consumer or an individual's power back when we have to
Exactly.
go and talk to somebody like this.
Yeah.
So,
That's how
um,
I reframe it. That's how I
yeah,
reframe it. I'm telling you how I can meet your standards. I'm
exactly.
telling you how I can provide myself with basic needs. I'm
Exactly.
telling you how to help me. I'm
Yeah,
not here to help you.
right.
I just keep
Yeah,
it
I
real.
don't care about helping you.
I
You're
keep it real.
supposed to
I've
do your
told my
job.
deputy city manager that I'm like, I am not here to help the government. Okay. Like I am
Do
here to
your
provide myself
job.
with basic needs. I have the right
Right.
to do that
Yes, you
affordably,
do.
affordably,
And
and
every
if,
citizen in these groups, like
yeah.
these groups with 100,000 people, like, can you imagine if all of them just started calling their cities and doing what we're doing?
Oh my
Like, can
gosh.
you
This would be a lot
imagine
easier.
that? It'd
This
be
would be a
so
lot
much
easier.
easier, right? Because then they'd have all these people and they'd be sitting there going like, well, hell no, we can't ignore it anymore, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
They can ignore it until you show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just the crazy lady in the shipping container that they can kind of brush off here and there and,
Yeah.
appease me here and there with an email. But,
Yeah. Once
once they
there's,
figured out, well, I'm not really going anywhere. And there
hmm
are people who are, showing up. I've getting other advocates, getting momentum, getting people, there's
it's a
other
whole
cities in
different ball
California.
game.
Yep,
Yeah.
implementing this tiny home. I'm presenting this now like, hey, I've been asking for this for 2 years. And now
Yeah.
we have all these other cities that are that are implementing it already.
Yeah.
Now it's handed to you. Now you
Yeah.
can't really deny what's happening.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you could have been the leader and now you could just copy and paste, so
Right.
it's like you have this great example. Let this be the vessel and I
Exactly.
said this, let this be the vessel to be the example of this whole region. This
Sure.
could be the first, tiny home residential property in my region. And I am happy for this to be the example. Please,
Right.
you can put your name on it and say
Yeah.
you provided affordable housing to me,
That's
like,
right.
sure,
Do it.
you did all of it.
Yep.
That's fine.
Oh,
I
I
don't
give
care.
I'm like, go Buckingham. I'm like, do what you gotta do.
It's all you. Good
It's
job. I will
it's
pat you on the back.
exactly
I
because
don't care.
any way we can get in is a win. And
Yep.
anybody that speaks up is another advocate that helps along the way.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was great to talk to you and chat
I know.
tonight. And I
Thank
hope
you.
that maybe our little conversation will help some other people.
I hope so
So,
too. I
and
hope so
we'll
too.
catch up about California later in the week or something. So lots of good
Definitely.
stuff there. So
There's always
yeah.
something here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will chat with you soon.
Okay, thanks so
Okay.
much.
Thanks.